This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. All right. All right, we got a small group. That's fine. Since it's a small group, I mean, if something comes up, any questions, just chime on in. Okay. So,
Okay, thank you.
so let's see. Today is commercial property coverage. So, a lot of people trip up. It's a little different than your home policy. Your homeowner's policy gives you replacement costs for the home, and then you have actual cash value cost or valuation, I should say, for your contents. So you replace the home brand new, replace your belongings with used value. All right, that's what actual cash value is giving the used value for your belongings. Commercial property is a little different. It's going to be actual cash value on everything. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. As we get started, make sure you understand the difference between a contract, the four parts of a contract, I should say, and the four parts of a policy. So contract, this is kind of the general insurance section, basic terminology. A contract is broken down into four parts. The first one is consideration. And consideration is defined as an exchange of value. Clients provide two things of value. Number one, personal information on the application. For business, it'd be information about the business, actually. Okay, and premium. Money is always valuable, right? So it's the act of filling out the application, providing information, and paying premium. That's what the client gives as far as value. Now, the insurance company has to give something in value back to that prospect, that client, and they're going to give a promise. We promise to pay should you suffer loss according to the terms of our contract. And so that's what the definition of consideration is: exchange of value, the act for the promise of receiving benefits. In order to have a contract, you got to have a legal purpose. And the legal purpose in insurance is to protect against a loss. Now, sometimes your test definitely rewords it. I shouldn't say sometimes, a lot more. They're starting to reword things. So instead of saying protecting against a loss, it's saying that it's a contract that keeps you from getting a gain, which is just another way of saying we're protecting against a loss means you cannot get a gain. All right. So just kind of two sides of the same coin. They might go crazy with a thesaurus instead of saying legal purpose, like you see in all your study materials. When you take the test, they say legal objectives. Well, purpose and objectives are similar words. I mean, they just looked at a thesaurus and picked a different word for that, right? Agreement is broken down into offer and acceptance. Now, as an agent, you represent an insurance company. Your job is to sell insurance to the public. And so you're going to offer to insure their property, right? Or insure their situation, okay? They need to accept it. They have to say, yeah, you're right. I do need that coverage, and I do want to buy it from you and your company. All right. So you made an offer, they accepted it. Now what they're typically going to do is, in a sense, make a counteroffer. They're going to provide you with information on the application and pay the premium, and you're going to take this, you're going to give it to your insurance company, who then underwrites it. So they accept this counteroffer, they underwrite it, and then they may say, well, I realized they had a loss in the past. We can insure them still. We just have to charge them higher premium because of the experience. And so now here's another counteroffer going back to the client. Yes, we can insure you, but because you had this prior loss, we're going to have to charge you higher premium. Do you still want this coverage? Okay. So it can look like it goes back and forth, offer, counteroffer, offer, counteroffer. But it really doesn't matter. Both parties have to agree to the conditions in the contract. Your clients have to agree to provide information and pay the premium. The company has to agree to cover them at that rate. Okay, so yeah, that's agreement. Got to deal with competent parties. That's people in their right mind. And so if you're meeting with someone and they just don't seem like they're all there, I mean, then don't write them. Follow your intuition. Your company's hired you for a reason. They trust who you are and how you are when you're dealing with the public. And if someone just doesn't seem like they're all there, then bow out gracefully. Okay, so they have to be mentally competent, cannot be under the influence of alcohol or drugs, because then they would be judgment impaired, and legally they cannot enter into a legal contract. You cannot sell insurance to a minor. Now for the test, that's under age 16. Okay, at age 16, you can get a driver's license, but in order to drive the car, you got to have insurance. So someone may contract insurance on their life at age 16. That's kind of funny. They can buy it when they're 16, but you can't sell it till you're 18. All right, so keep that in mind. So they got to be legal age. Cannot be deceased, because they legally cannot enter into a contract. That's a kind of a weird one. And very rarely, more so probably on the life exam, is they cannot be a public enemy. A public enemy is someone who's armed and dangerous and wanted by the law, and you're trying to sell them life insurance. You know, they get shot and killed as the police apprehend them and bring them to justice, and now this person's family member gets paid from the insurance you sold them. Okay, so that's kind of a conflict, right? But that's a rare one. Right? But those are your 4 parts of a contract. The parts of a policy, we're going to start with the declarations page or the deck sheet. Right? It's the first page of the policy. It tells you who is the insurance company, who's the insured, the effective date and ending date of the coverage. Right? It kind of summarizes the coverage, you know, that it's a personal auto policy, blah, 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 okay, whatever it may be. Okay. As part of the declaration page, there's also something called an insuring clause. It's usually on the deck page, and the insuring clause for the test is a paragraph that describes this is the type of policy that the insured purchased. So for this exam, I've seen the clause that describes that the insured purchased a business owner policy would be which of the following. And that would be the insuring clause. It tells you the type or kind of policy you bought. And again, they go crazy with the thesaurus. You might see insuring clause or you might see insuring agreement. Right? But just keep in mind, the insuring clause just tells you this is what type of policy you bought. The conditions clause spells out the duties and rights of both parties, or sometimes it'll say the conditions clause spells out the obligations of each party. Clients are obligated to fill out the application, pay the premium. If a loss occurs, the clients are obligated to provide notice of a loss and then proof of loss, and the insurance company is obligated to investigate, settle, and pay the claim. So it spells out the obligations or the duties and rights of both parties. Right? I kind of want to say it kind of spells out your obligations that you have to fulfill in order to collect from the policy. Exclusions are quite simple. It just simply tells you what's not covered. With exclusions, just think of the catastrophic perils, you know, nuclear risk, war or active war, earthquake, flood. Yes, some of them you can buy back, like earthquake and flood. But anything pretty much catastrophic in nature typically will not be covered by insurance. 2 other common exclusions that you do need to be aware of is intentional acts and wear and tear. Those also are not covered by insurance. And so those are your 4 parts of a policy. Now remember that a policy has a conditions section. A contract does not. And so a very common test question, which of the following is not necessary, right, for the formation of a valid contract? And you might get consideration, legal purpose, conditions, or competent parties. And you're probably, you know, when you're stress taking the test, you're thinking, oh, in order to have a contract, we got to meet conditions. And that would be wrong, okay? Because it's kind of a subcategory of the agreement element. In the agreement section, we agreed to conditions, okay? So there is no condition section in the contract. It's part of the agreement element, okay? Because we agreed to the conditions. So be wary of that. But there is a conditions section as part of a policy. As far as the policy is concerned, there's also 2 other items you need to be aware of, the definitions. And you do want to look at the policy's definition of whatever it is may happen, okay? Although you may use Google or Bing and search terminology, that's great, but it's a general definition, but you definitely want to look at the actual definition in the policy because it's defining how this particular situation is being covered by this particular policy. So it's pretty specific versus a general definition that you might pick up, you know, when you're looking for something online. Endorsements, additional charge, typically for additional features and benefits. We have endorsements that people can basically set up and add to the contract to help personalize the contract to their unique needs. In the life and health world, they're called riders. Right? In the property and casualty world, they're called endorsements, additional charge for additional features and benefits. Right? And there's quite a few different ones. We'll get into it in the other webinars that we have. As far as commercial coverages, you do need to know the coverage parts, or a lot of times on the test, they'll call them coverage modules. All right, so the one we're going to talk about tonight is going to be the commercial property coverage part or coverage module. All right. And the other ones we'll have coming up will be commercial crime, commercial general liability, or sometimes just called general liability, inland marine, boiler machinery, or sometimes called equipment breakdown coverage, commercial auto coverage, and farm coverage. Okay, so there's like 7 different types of commercial coverages. Now, if you only buy one, that's what we call a monoline policy. And commercial auto is actually typically sold as a monoline policy a lot of times. But if you buy 2 or more coverage parts or 2 or more modules, then it becomes a package or a modular policy. So watch out for that word modular. You'll see it a lot. So if you bought property and liability coverage on your business, then you have a package or modular policy. Right? So again, I'm trying to introduce you to the terminology they use on the test, because a lot of the training that I've seen, they do call it commercial coverage parts. And then you go take the test and you're like, there's no coverage part. What the hell's a module? Again, the test just went a little crazy with the thesaurus. And just change the terminology to modules instead of just calling it coverage parts. Okay. So, all right. So every portion of the commercial package, right? So every module has their own common policy conditions, and you do need to know these. These are very common to be on the test. First of all, who may cancel the policy? First named insured may cancel the policy. That means if they cancel the policy, who gets the premium refund? And again, it would be the first named insured. Now, for a business, the named insured is going to be the company that we're insured. The first named insured is the individual that makes decisions on behalf of this particular policy. And that you need to understand. All right. Changes, who can request changes to the policy? Again, the first named insured. So Bob and Bill own a business, right? They're both named on the policy, and it's a partnership. It says Bob and Bill's grocery store. Okay. Since Bob is listed first, Bob is the first named insured. Bob can actually cancel the policy. Bob can request changes to the policy. That's how you need to understand it for the test. The examination of your books and records condition basically says we, the insurance company, can examine your books and records during the policy period and for up to 3 years after coverage ends. Typically, that's going to be associated with investigating a claim. The premium, well, who's responsible for paying the premium? And again, it's the first named insured. That means if the first named insured cancels a policy, or if the insurance company cancels a policy, who's entitled to the premium refund? And that's going to be that first named insured. Inspections and surveys. Whenever you see this, this actually is associated with underwriting. Right? We, the insurance company, may actually inspect and survey the business to see if it's an acceptable risk. And if we see unusual hazards, it could be a condition where we might not issue the policy, or we might issue the policy, but we could charge higher rates. And in some cases, if we do an inspection or survey the property and we see you're having good loss control measures in place, it could actually lower the rate. Okay, but the inspections and surveys deal with underwriting it to see if it's acceptable. Another area where this may come into play would be at renewal. They may, re-underwrite the policy, take another look at the business to see what the renewal premium may be. Transfer rights or assignment. And so this is, when you see transfer rights, that means we're transferring the ownership of the policy from one party to another. This will typically come into play when you own a business and you sell the business to someone else. Now, rather than the person buying the business from you running out and buying a whole new policy, since you already have coverage, when you sell the business, why not transfer the ownership of the policy you have on the business to them? And so they now take over the policy on the business that you are carrying. Right? And you can do this, but you do need to have insurance companies' written permission. Reason is, you've been running this business for 15 years. You know how to run it. You know how to run a safe operation. The person that bought the business from you, this is kind of the first business they entered into. You know, they're taking a risk, they saved up some money or got some inheritance, they're buying this business to run it, generate some income, and they really don't have the experience that you have. And so the underwriter, we can transfer that same policy to the person buying the business from you, but the underwriter may have to reevaluate the risk and adjust the premium because it could be an increased risk situation. Right? So again, an assignment can be done with insurance company's written permission. Right? I mean, you could probably do this in the personal lines too. You know, you own a house, you sell the house, and the person that's buying the house from you, let's say it's a private sale, rather than them running out buying a new policy, you can transfer the ownership of the policy on the house that you have to them. Okay, but again, it gives the insurance company an opportunity to reevaluate the risk and assess appropriate premium. But we typically don't do that in the real world. Usually they write a brand new policy because they want the policy count. All right. Some terms to know. We talked a little bit about first named insured. Named insured is people that are named on the contract, like Bob and Bill own the grocery store, Bob and Bill's grocery store. They're both named, but remember, Bob is the first one named, so Bob is the one that controls it. Always remember that the first named insured controls the contract. Uninsured is anyone covered by the policy, although not specifically named. All right. This is going to come in more so on the personal lines portion of your test, where, you know, Jack and Jill own a car, they lend it to their neighbor, the neighbor goes to the store, gets into an accident. You know, since it's Jack and Jill's car, right, then Jack and Jill's policy will pay for it. So Jack and Jill are named insured because they're named insured on the personal auto policy. The neighbor is not named, but they're still covered. And that would be uninsured, someone who's covered by the policy that's not specifically named. All right. Remember, on the personal lines, occasional use of a vehicle is covered by the vehicle owner's insurance. So anyone using your vehicle with your permission, your insurance is primary. Okay. You need to know the definition of first party, which is the client, the insured, that's the first party to a contract. In the definition section, you'll see you or yours. All right, we are covering you or your stuff from loss. The second party to an insurance contract is going to be the insurance company. And you'll see verbiage such as we or us. So we or us, the insurance company, are going to protect you and yours against loss. And we'll pay as long as you're legally obligated or legally liable to pay for the loss. So insurance is a two-party contract between you, the insured, and the second party, the insurer. That's, every once in a while you'll hear the phrase personal contract, which means it's a two-party contract between you, the first party, and the insurance company, the second party. Anyone other than you two is a third party. And so all liability claims are third-party claims. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. So diving more deeply into it, just like all of our property policies, we have cause of loss forms, and commercial is no different, right? It's a building, right? It's property. So we have basic, broad, special, and we have an earthquake policy, okay? So keep that in mind. So whereas on the personal line side, you have basic, broad, and special, and you only get one cause of loss form. Commercial, you may actually have two cause of loss forms on the contract. You may have broad and earthquake. Right? So yes, in the commercial world, some companies offer earthquake as a cause of loss form. Some companies offer earthquake as a separate policy. And in some cases, earthquake can also be covered as an endorsement to your existing property policy. But know the difference. Basic form is different in commercial than it is in personal. It does actually provide more coverage. It automatically provides fire, lightning, and your extended coverage perils. Make sure you understand the extended coverage perils. Use the abbreviations WARVs, right? Windstorm, hail, aircraft, riots, vehicle, explosion, and smoke. There's 7, it's a package of 7 perils that can be part of the policy. And in a commercial property policy, they're already built into the basic form. In dwelling, a DP1, a standard fire policy, or an HO1, you actually have to purchase it and add it to your policy. Those are all basic forms, and you have to add it. Another thing is commercial property basic form covers vandalism. Again, a DP1 or standard fire policy, including an HO1, you have to add it on, pay additional charge and add it to the list of perils. But in commercial property basic form, it's part of it. Sprinkler leakage is automatically covered, sinkhole collapse, and volcanic action. When I say volcanic action, I'm not talking like lava, volcanic eruption, lava destroys your building, or you got the volcanic eruption with the booms, right? I guess the shock waves from the earthquake destroying your building. That's not what I'm talking about. Volcanic action here is more of a debris removal situation where a volcano erupts and dumps ash on your building. And this covers the cost to clean up the ash. That's how you want to understand it. Okay? Because volcanic activity is catastrophic in nature, and therefore it does not lend itself to predictability, and therefore is not covered. But a volcano erupts from several miles away and dumps ash on your building, that's just a cleanup. Okay, and your policies can't cover that. So this is the basic form. That means a broad form, we cover those basic perils, plus we'll give you some glass coverage. Now the glass coverage has a sublimit, $100 a window with a $500 maximum. That's all you get. So if you look at the picture that I have here, I mean, that doesn't even cover one floor, right? $100 a window with a $500 max. That means we give you $100 towards a maximum of 5 windows, and that's it. I mean, they got more than 5 windows just on one floor on one side of this particular building, either one of these buildings. So it's not enough, okay? And we'll talk about some extensions you can get to increase the coverage. Falling objects is on the broad form. It's not on the basic form. That's going to be common as a test question, and that's also true on the personal line side. All right, what does a DP2 or a DP3 provide coverage for that is not included in a DP1? Falling objects and collapse. Those are very common as far as that type of question. Right? What's covered by the broad and special form, not covered in the basic. Falling objects and collapse are 2 common answers that they ask you on the test. The broad form also covers weight of ice, sleet, or snow, which could cause your building to collapse. And accidental discharge of water. Accidental discharge means it's got to be a sudden and accidental rupture. Okay, wear and tear is not covered. If there's a slow leak within the walls, which causes mildew, that's not covered because it's wear and tear. You have to be able to put a specific date and time to when that loss occurred. If you cannot, then it typically will not be covered, especially when it relates to water loss. The special form is an all-risk form. That means we cover anything you could possibly think of except for this list of exclusions. And like I said, think of the catastrophic losses. Earthquake. The special form causal loss form doesn't cover earthquake, but you could purchase the earthquake causal loss form to add to it, and that would. Okay, so special form doesn't cover earthquake, but the earthquake causal loss form does. Keep them separate. Special form doesn't cover flood, nuclear risk, war, or active war. And like I said, wear and tear and intentional acts are not covered by insurance. So again, anytime you see special, open peril, or all risk form, we cover anything you could possibly think of except for this small list of exclusions. So it's not on the list, it's covered. Earthquake, like I said, there's 3 ways of purchasing earthquake coverage in commercial property coverage. Number 1, you can add it as a causal loss form. Number 2, you can buy it as a separate policy. Number 3, some companies add it as an endorsement to your existing coverage. Right? But for the test, they want you to add it as a causal loss form. Okay. Valuation, if you suffer loss, how will the policy pay? Well, for commercial property, it's actual cash value on everything. Actual cash value for the building, actual cash value for your business personal property, and actual cash value for the personal property of others. When I say personal property of others, that would be like Bailey insurance. You know, maybe you have a dry cleaning business and people leave their shirts with you overnight and there's a fire. Not only did it destroy your dry cleaning business, but it also destroyed your customer's property under your care, custody, and control. Okay, so that would be personal property of others. Another example would be a veterinary hospital where people leave their pets overnight to be watched, right? And something happens, okay? And so you have temporary possession of other people's pets. And if a loss occurs, we're going to replace that pet on an actual cash value basis. In all of our property policies, the standard deductible is $250. So if you do get any type of question, you know, how much is the loss, assuming they have a standard deductible, know that the standard deductible is $250. There is one exception to that. The standard deductible for a business owner policy is $500. All right, so keep that in mind. Okay. Now, with commercial property, we have a co-insurance clause. Insurance companies are encouraging you to carry adequate amounts of coverage to the value of the building. So for the test, the most common number that they use is they want you to require or at least have at least 80% of coverage to the value of the building. And some people, they want to cut their costs. I don't think I'll ever suffer total loss. So, you know, why don't I just insure 50% of the building? Okay, well, if you insure for less than the co-insurance requirement, the penalty is you're going to have to pay more of the claim. And so there's a couple questions you're going to get on co-insurance, and it's not just the math equation that you may get from it. Number one, they may ask you a question, what is the co-insurance equation? And you do need to know it's the amount of insurance you did have divided by the amount of insurance you should have had. You take that and you times it by whatever the loss may be. That's how much your insurance company will pay on the claim minus any possible deductible. So you need to know what the co-insurance definition is, right? Or what the equation is. You need to know why insurance companies want you to carry at least 80% of coverage to the value of the property. And that's this first bullet here, to encourage insureds to carry a minimum amount of insurance in relation to the value. Right? And if you underinsure using this equation, you're actually going to have to pay more of a claim. That's the penalty for insuring for less than what the insurance company is requiring you to carry. Right? Take a look at the co-insurance webinars that I have on my site. I do have one. I think I go through about 2 or 3 different co-insurance equations. Once you get the equation down, it's pretty good. The worst case scenario, you get maybe 2 or 3 math questions on your exam, folks. Okay, so most states, 150 questions, you need 70%. That's a C minus. You can miss 45 questions. So if you don't know math and they only give you 2 or 3 math questions, you didn't fail because you didn't know math. Okay, so you want to focus a little more attention to other areas. But again, know the definition of co-insurance. Know that insurance companies encourage people to carry reasonable amounts of coverage in relationship to the loss, so they don't come up short in a partial loss. Right? Know the equation and then know how to plug the numbers in the equation. And the trickiest part to this equation is the should amount. What you did have is how much insurance did you buy? What you should have had is 80% of the value of the building. Now, where a lot of people make mistakes in plugging numbers in is they put how much insurance you did buy divided by, and they put the value of the building. And that would be wrong. Because if the insurance company is saying you only need 80% of the coverage of the value of the building, then that bottom number should be 80% of the building value. All right. And then once you plug it in, right, if you're taking the test, usually there's a tab at the top of the screen where you click down, there's a calculator that you can use on the screen. Or in some test sites, they might give you a 4-function calculator. Those of you that have taken the test at home or at work, use the calculator on the screen, don't bring your own. Okay, so just to let you know. All right, now another thing, insurance companies encourage you to carry reasonable amounts of coverage because if you carry 80% co-insurance, you get 5 free extensions. Now, the difference between an extension and an endorsement is endorsements are additional charge for additional features. Extensions are free as long as you have 80% of coverage to the value of the building. Okay? That's how you want to understand that. So as far as extensions go, what the free ones that you could have, a newly acquired or constructed building. Right? So maybe you bought a building and you're in acquisition of the building right across the, I guess, the walkway. So you have a building and you're buying the building next to your building, right? Or you're buying a lot and you're going to build a building next door, okay? Well, as long as you have 80% co-insurance on your first building, we'll automatically give you up to $250,000 for coverage for that newly acquired or that new building that's being constructed. Not only do we give you $250,000 of coverage on the new building, we're also going to give you $100,000 worth of coverage for personal property in the new building. Right? Again, these are add-ons that are free as long as you have 80% of coverage to the value of the property. We do provide some valuable papers and records coverage. I don't have a dollar amount for that because it's not really important. Where they're going to ask you valuable papers and records questions is during actually as part of the inland marine section. Manuscripts, maps, drawings, and mortgages are covered by which of the following. And you want to pick valuable papers and records coverage, but you probably won't see it. So take a step back. Those are covered by inland marine coverage. Right. Property off premises, maybe you do give your executives a laptop to take home. As long as they're in and around the building within 100 feet of the premises, they're covered by your commercial property policy. Once they leave the premises, and maybe they go to a business function, then there's no coverage. Remember that your commercial property policy only covers property when it's in and around the building within 100 feet of the premises. So it's not like your homeowner's policy where your personal property is covered anywhere in the world. This one does have a territorial limit of it's got to be within 100 feet of the premises. All right. And so we give you 10,000 if they take it beyond that threshold. If you have a sign that's attached to the building, one of the extensions is we'll give you up to $2,500 for that sign, which really isn't a lot, right? Especially if you've got some, a movable electronic neon sign, 2,500 bucks is not enough. And so you can get the inland marine sign coverage, which will increase the value of the sign. But you do get $2,500 free if you have 80% of coverage to the value of the building. Right? So again, these are extensions that are typically given free or added to the policy for free as long as you have reasonable amounts of coverage. So when you buy a commercial property coverage form, then you do have some different coverage forms that you can add to it. The first one is builder's risk, and this is kind of a variation of your commercial property policy. It doesn't cover a building that's already built. This is covering building a building. And so you own the land across the way and you're going to build a building on that plot. This is going to cover all the materials that you're purchasing that are going to be installed in your building. So it's going to cover the girders, the beams, the wood flooring, the air conditioning units, the windows, anything that's being installed in that building that you're having being built. It does not cover the builder's tools. Contractor's equipment coverage covers the builder's tools because you're probably going to contract a company to build a building. They're going to use their tools when they build it. You're just providing the materials for them to put together and create this building, right? So keep that in mind. So there's really no liability associated with builder's risk because there's nobody there. The only people that are there building the building are the workers, and they're typically covered by workers' comp by the contractor. In some cases, you might want business income coverage. So if you have a loss after a 72-hour wait, or sometimes you'll see a 72-hour deductible, right? The insurance company can pay you lost revenues because of a shutdown due to a covered peril. Probably the best example would be you have a restaurant. Your restaurant has a fire, and they cannot rebuild that kitchen within 72 hours. Okay, so well, after 72 hours, we'll start paying you. The insurance company will start paying you the lost revenues that you would normally own or earn if you were open for business. Okay, that's what that's about. Extra expense coverage is kind of like business income, but extra expenses begins immediately at the time of a loss to get you up and running as soon as possible after a covered loss. So whereas business income replaces lost revenue after a 3-day wait, extra expenses begins immediately. So let me explain the situation. Let's say you have a restaurant, it's a pretty good sized building. You have a restaurant in the front side of the building. In the back side of the building, you have a catering service. All right. And a fire destroys your building, which damages the restaurant and the catering business. And so your restaurant, you're not going to be open for business for a while. So after 72 hours, we're going to start paying you lost revenues that you would normally earn if you were open cooking and selling food. But the catering service, well, we need money immediately because you got orders. And so extra expense coverage provides money to immediately get a location, get equipment, and get up and running as soon as possible so you can still cater to your customers that ordered that food from you. So in some cases, you only need the business income coverage. In some cases, you only need the extra expense coverage. And in some cases, you need both. So depending on the type of business. Now, business income and extra expense coverage are indirect or consequential loss coverage. Remember, the direct loss is the fire. And now because of this fire, you have this other loss of lost revenues because you're not open, right? Or you need additional money to get up and running as soon as possible. And so those are indirect or consequential loss coverages. Business income can actually be what's called a time element coverage. The longer it takes for us to rebuild your restaurant and get you open again, the greater the claim will be for an insurance company, because we're paying you the lost income that you would normally earn if you were open for business. So the longer it takes us to rebuild you and get you open again, the greater the claim will be. And that's when you hear that time element, right? The amount of losses linked to the time it takes to restore, rebuild, or reconstruct the property. Glass coverage. On the broad form, it only gives you $100 a window with a $500 max. In commercial property coverage, believe it or not, even on a special form, you only get $100 a window with a $500 max per occurrence. And looking at the picture that I have here, I mean, there's more than 5 windows just on one floor, on one side of the building. And so $100 a window with a $500 per occurrence max is not enough. And so by adding glass coverage, it's going to cover all the windows on an all risk basis. All right. To be honest with you, this is detailed. You see, every window is lettered and numbered to show its exact position on the building, and it's itemized on the information page of the deck sheet. Okay, and that's detailed. Only windows that are listed on the information page of the deck sheet would be covered. So newly acquired glass is not going to be covered until you add it to the deck page. That's how you need to understand that. All right. It is all risk coverage. And anytime you see all risk, pay attention to exclusions. And with glass coverage, one of the exclusions or two of the exclusions are explosion and fire. The reason explosion and fire is not covered by glass coverage is because it's covered by the property coverage. That's how that works. Condominium association coverage covers the exterior common grounds of a condominium. Okay? You know, the hallways, the stairways, right? The pool, right? Maybe the parking lot with the carports, right? That would be the condominium association coverage. And then condominium unit owners coverage covers the interior of the condo. So if you have a condominium, and it's probably a brand new condominium, it'll probably have both on the association policy. It'll have the association covering the common grounds, the exteriors, and it'll have the unit owners covering the interiors, where you as a condo owner, you really only need an HO4, which is like that renter's broad form coverage, right? Because this covers the interior unit, the interior structure, if a loss occurs. So, but eventually they're going to drop the unit owner's coverage, and therefore you want to change your HO4 to an HO6 because the HO6 now covers your interior unit, walls, kitchen cabinets, and bathtub. All right, so an HO4 or HO6 may be used for someone who owns a condo, and that's contingent or dependent upon what type of coverage is the association policy affording. Leasehold's interest, if you do have a covered loss and you do have to break your lease to go to another location, it could help out with that. But another thing it could also help out is, let's say rents went up. Right? I mean, you got in at a really good time in this particular location, you have an office set up and there's a fire. Well, let's say the owner decides not to build. Okay, well, then you got to find another location. Well, you were paying $2,000 a month for this location. To find a comparable area, a comparable size building for you to lease, it now costs $3,000 a month. Well, to indemnify you, the insurance company's only going to pay you the $2,000 a month that you were paying. So, but it's costing you additional $1,000 to get a similar location. Well, the leasehold interest cover could be applied towards the increased cost of the lease at another location. And legal liability just pays what you're legally liable for. Okay. That's kind of related to Bailey's coverage, where you're under possession of other people's property. Okay. Remember, Bailey's coverage is like inland marine coverage. Just Bailey's coverage is more low ticket items like a dry cleaners. People leave their shirts and clothes with you. Inland marine is more high ticket, high theft items like jewelry, like a 4-carat stone that's being dropped off to be cleaned, resized, refitted in a new ring, whatever. That's expensive items. That's inland marine. Okay, but you know, shirts at the dry cleaner, that's Bailey coverage. Right. And so that's kind of how commercial property coverage works. You're going to get a couple of these. You do need to know builder's risk. You need to know business income, extra expenses. You got to know the business income formula, and that's in the playbook. Right? Know that glass coverage is limited on the broad and special form. You do need to know the association coverage. These last two, I doubt you'll get. They're kind of rare, but you do get a couple questions on the commercial section of your test. Right? If commercial is a weak spot when you take your test, it's going to seem overwhelming because you do get probably about out of 150 questions, maybe 51 to 53 questions are going to be in commercial. Likewise, 51 to 53 questions will be on personal lines. And so if commercial is weak, yeah, 1/3 of your test is commercial, but if you're not comfortable with commercial, you're going to say half the test was commercial. People do exaggerate on those weak spots. So, you know, the test is not personalized. You know, at the beginning of the test, if you get one topic question wrong, they're not going to load up the test with questions on that weak spot. I've heard people, you know, ask me, hey, does the test do this? They're actually told by some of the training facilities out there that as soon as you start your test, you want to skip all the questions. So you lock in the question and you go back and answer it. And I'm like, what a waste of time. Okay. Per Department of Insurance curriculum, they have to ask you a certain number of questions in certain areas. So, I mean, they can't overload the test in a weak spot. The technology does exist for that to happen. Department of Insurance cannot use it because it violates their curriculum. Okay, so don't get bogged down by a lot of people's stories. Yeah, fake news, it's out there. So don't buy into it. Okay, focus on the material, study the areas. The areas that you do need some additional insight, you need a little more clarity or understanding, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Okay. Like I said, with Marissa, we're having a Zoom meeting Monday afternoon so I can coach her. But anyone else out there that does want a little more insight, a little more information, I mean, you can email me and we can definitely set up some time. I might have another live training class on Saturday, December 4th in Emeryville. But it's what, November 17th. That's like 2 weeks away. Hopefully you guys don't wait that long. I mean, as much as I'd love to have you, hopefully you guys take your test within a week to 2 weeks, okay, and get this thing done.
Yeah, I already
just
have mine set for the 29th.
Yeah, so I mean, so reach out to me before then. Well, we are going to meet Monday, but
Yeah.
knock on wood, you pass. You know, I'd love to see you on the 4th, but I really don't want to. I want you to pass, succeed, and move on. Okay. So
Yeah, that would be nice. This will be the 3rd time I'm taking it. So
yeah, you're not alone. I met some people 5 times. They fail. You can take the test 10 times a year. You don't want to. I get it. You know, it's more money, more time and energy, but hunker down, focus. And each time you do get a little more insight. And hopefully you remember a little bit more of what you saw so you can focus on the weak areas. Okay. So,
okay.
All right. With that, do you guys have any questions?
No questions. Thanks, Lauren.
You got it. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no questions as of right now. I'm still just going over the playbook, and my boss, she's actually the broker of the business I'm working in. She's trying to assist me with a lot of the general information. And so she's also helping me. And so it's just a lot of cramming stuff in before I take this test. Hopefully, third time's a charm, you know?
Yeah, I know. You can do this and trust yourself, you know. I mean, right now you probably have a lot of test anxiety or second guessing. Is this how I should know it? Or is this how I should know it? Just remember I saw this question, but oh my God, I picked this one. Maybe I should have picked this. You know, through repetition of my questions and going through the playbook, you take out the test anxiety. You become familiar with the questions, and as you're reading it, you already know the answer. Then you're ready to go take the test. Okay. But you will still get some questions like where you just want to like, you know, pull your hair out type of stuff. But, you know, take a deep cleansing breath. In general, what are they asking? And then answer it and move on to the next question. Okay. So
Yeah,
it
I
is
know. I need
doable.
to stop second guessing. Everyone just keeps telling me, they're like, Marissa, you know the information. You're working in this environment, so you know what's going on. You're just second guessing yourself. So it's
Yeah.
just a
And that,
lot of nerves, and you sit there and you see the actual terms, and then I think what's hurting me the most is actually working in the environment and hearing how you actually use the terms
yeah.
after it's all done. So I'm sitting here and hearing everything how it actually is, and then going back and seeing how it's actually supposed to be is it's quite confusing.
Yeah, as much as I want to say throw out the real world, unfortunately, you're still immersed in it. But when you take your test, I mean, okay, how did Lauren's material say it? That's how you want to know it, not how you do it in the office. So be wary of that. Okay. So, but it is
Okay, well,
doable, and you know it's doable because Marissa, I know you've met some people. You're like, holy crap, they have their license. Man, I can't even understand what the hell they're saying when they explain coverages, right? You've seen
yeah.
that.
I've
Okay.
seen some people, I'm like, how did you get that license? Okay, I'm like, if you could do it, I could do it.
Yeah. See? So they're out there. I'm like, I'm shocked that sometimes I deal with people out there in the industry like, holy crap, how did this guy even get hired? But so
I'm right there with you. I'm
uh,
like, it's really just some of the terms I know that's messing me up, and it is honestly just after taking the test twice, they really do. They make you work for it, and it's
yeah,
something that I do need to watch closely with how they word things, because that is what's messing me up a lot. I've noticed with my boss trying to help me, she'll word things differently, and then I'll say something and I'm like, no, that's not actually what it was. I was like, wow, you tripped me up.
yeah, yeah, that's good. So at least you're recognizing it. That's key. Okay. So,
Yeah. Well, I
but yeah,
super appreciate you helping us out today, and I will talk to you on Monday. And I just really appreciate you taking time out of your day on Monday. And then today, I mean, it's well, not super late, but it's late, and I get you're probably tired, so I do appreciate it.
I'm dedicated to having you guys pass. Okay. So I mean, you guys taking a leap and trusting me with the material. My material is good. I know people do pass, and I just want that success for you. So, yeah, not a problem. Okay, thank you very much. All right.
Okay, goodbye.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night, and we'll check in. Any questions, don't hesitate and reach out. All right. Take care.
Okay,
Good
bye
luck.
guys.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you.